If you ever feel a little lost or overwhelmed in the kitchen, there might be some simple habits that are missing. Getting nutrients into our bodies is very important, so being in the kitchen isn't something we can really skip out on, even if we don't like it. However, we can make some simple changes in our habits to help us feel more in control in the kitchen so that our meal planning routine just flows better, the fridge never gets stinky, and we don't get overwhelmed with dishes. So let's get into a list of 7 good habits to create in the kitchen for smoother meal routines.
Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renae Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast.
Now, before we get into these 7 habits, I just want you to kind of close your eyes and, well, not if you're driving, obviously. If you're in a space where you can close your eyes, I want you to close your eyes and really think about your time in the kitchen and where you're kind of tripping up if you are feeling overwhelmed. Is it because dishes are being piled high? Is it because you just don't know what to make? You just feel like there's too many ingredients and you don't know how to put them together? There's a lot of different areas of our kitchens that might kind of get us stuck a little bit. So when you think about what your routine looks like and what your time in the kitchen looks like, you can start to pinpoint what is really good and what's working well, what you enjoy, and then what is making you feel a little more stuck or overwhelmed. And these habits, you don't have to put all of them into place at once. You might not even realize or like not even think that you need all of them, and you might not need all of them. But if you think about your time in the kitchen and then compare it with these 7 habits, you can start to pick out like, this is the one that's going to help me the most. I need to implement this. And you can start to pick and choose what is going to work best for you and start with just one thing first so it doesn't feel overwhelming trying to change all these habits. But pick one if it sounds like it's something that would work well for you, then get really good at that and get it implemented so you're repeating it over and over and it becomes more automatic. And then pull another one in if you feel like it's time to do that. So don't feel like you have to just change up everything. This is meant to help you, not to make you feel like shameful or anything like that. This is just some ideas that you can take and pull what that you think is going to work best for you. So, we're going to go into the 7 good habits to create in the kitchen for smoother meal routines. And this is just my opinion. I was thinking of things that Tony and I do in our kitchen and things that really help us stay on track and keep us organized in the kitchen. And that is the list I created here. So, these are 7 habits that we have that I think are really good that might be beneficial to others, especially if they're feeling a little chaotic or overwhelmed when they're in the kitchen. So, number one is to clean out your fridge every week. And this might sound overwhelming if you have, a really full fridge and everything like that, but I'm not saying you have to completely overhaul your fridge every week, but we do need to have a regular routine to clean it out, get anything that's old or not going to be used, get it out of the fridge so it doesn't even have a chance to start, getting stinky and getting moldy or turning to liquid in the back of the fridge because that has happened before. Like you just forget about it and it keeps getting pushed back and back and back. And all of a sudden you open a container, you don't even know what it originally was. And it's disgusting. Like that is something that we want to avoid because we want to be able to open our fridge and see, a bunch of healthy ingredients and things that we are enjoying. We don't want to open the fridge and like scrunch our noses and be like, what on earth died in here? Like it just is a terrible feeling. So we want to get in the habit of cleaning out your fridge each week. Now, you have to decide what works best for you and the timing. So for us, we have just created a habit of cleaning out the fridge a couple of different times. So we kind of have a backup and this is just how it's fallen based on what we do but we have our garbage pickup on Monday mornings. So Tony always brings the garbage down on Sunday nights. So I just know that at some point before he brings the garbage down on Sunday, I want to go through the fridge because typically he will do it and he definitely does. But typically, if we're cleaning out the fridge, I'm the one doing it for the most part. But I just know that I need to get it done before he brings the garbage down because that just seems to be good timing to get rid of anything that needs to go in the trash, to get it in there before he brings it down so it doesn't sit there all week and we're not doing it in the beginning of the week. And then because we're doing it before the garbage goes down and we're doing it usually Saturday or Sunday, sometimes we'll do it at the end of the week, like a Thursday or Friday if we're leaving for the weekend and we need to bring it down. So it just kind of falls that way. We just know the deadline is before the garbage gets taken out. And then it ends up working really well for us because then garbage gets taken on Monday morning. Well, then my habit for meal planning to do our weekly grocery shopping is Tuesday. And that means that the fridge is already cleaned out and ready to go for Tuesday when I get home with groceries. So that's how it works really well for us. You can kind of look at your schedule and your garbage pickup or your time of what works best for you to grocery shop, things like that. You just want to make sure that you're cleaning it out every week and doing a quick run through, go getting through all of those containers, anything that is old or is not going to be used, get it out of the fridge. If you have leftover meals that are still good but you aren't going to get to, consider putting them in the freezer and transferring them to the freezer instead so you don't waste those meals but you then have just a quick go-to meal. Like if you have chili in the fridge and it's like, we're kind of sick of chili, but this is still perfectly fine to eat. Let's just transfer it to the freezer. And now we've got a quick chili meal ready to go when it's time. So there's things like that that you kind of want to get used to doing when you're cleaning out the fridge. And then it will help you to keep your fridge feeling fresh and not getting so overloaded. Okay, so the second habit is to have painter's tape and a permanent marker in your cupboard or in your kitchen somewhere. Maybe it's in a drawer, maybe it's in a cabinet. Ours is in a cabinet above the fridge. But we love having this, or I love having it. I don't think I don't think Tony really cares that much. But I love having it because we make a lot of things homemade. Like we'll do sauces and dressings and things like that where we want to label those. We do bone broth. We want to label them so that I know how long they've been in the fridge. And this is a habit that actually came from I was a teenager and I worked at a cafe in our like local town and they always had painter's tape and a permanent marker. And anytime you'd put anything in, like being in a cafe in a food industry, you have to label your food before it goes in the fridge. So it was always a habit that it was just very convenient to open the fridge and know exactly when things were put in there, what it was for sure. Like you don't have to open all the containers to find out what's in there if they're not clear, things like that. It just became a really nice habit. So I have a permanent marker and painter's tape. So if we're making, like ranch dressing homemade, I can just jot on there ranch dressing and the date. And if it is something that is being opened, like say you're opening some coffee creamer, I can just take the permanent marker and just write the date on that coffee creamer when it was opened. And then I know how long it's been in there. So if you have kind of a bit of a fear of eating expired food, like you don't have to worry about that so much anymore because it's all dated. You know exactly when you opened it. So that's just something that is very convenient. And then it also helps when you're doing that fridge clean out to look at those dates on all of the different items in the fridge because then you can very quickly see, okay, this is a week old. I should probably get rid of this and just get rid of it rather than sitting there questioning, like, when did we eat this? When was it just a couple days ago? Was it a week and a half ago? Like, we just don't know. So you don't have to worry about that because it's all dated and labeled. So, habit number three is a fridge sweep every week. So, a fridge sweep day is what you'd want to put on your meal planning calendar. So, this is like instead of actually planning a meal that night, we do a fridge sweep day. And typically, a fridge sweep day comes towards the end of the week, usually, not always, but it usually comes towards the end of the week because that gives me a day that we can get kind of creative with what is still in our fridge that we need to use up before we do our next grocery shopping trip. So this is something like a lot, it's usually a lot of vegetables. Like we're trying to use up those vegetables. So can we do a stir fry? Can we do burrito bowls and just throw like the peppers and the onions and the lettuce and get everything in there where we can kind of mix it up and have a good meal that's using up the last of all of those different items, especially produce that is in the fridge. Another idea was like we had leftover rice and we had leftover mushrooms from a different dish, things like that, and some onions as well. And so last week we had these items in there and I was like, well, like we've got a little, it was like sheep's cheese. And it was the first time we had ever had sheep's cheese, but we were able to take those ingredients and we're like, okay, well, let's just mix them up. We'll put a little bone broth in there and just kind of make this like cheesy mushroom risotto style dish with rice. And it ended up working out really well. It ended up just being kind of like a mushroom cheesy rice, and it worked out really well, and we were able to use up all of those ingredients without actually wasting any of it, and it helped us clean out the fridge at the same time. So that's kind of what you're looking at doing for these fridge sweep days. So we were able to pair that with like I think we did roasted broccoli and grilled chicken, and it ended up working out really well. So things like that are really great to be able to use up those ingredients without feeling like you don't know what you're doing. It's just a good creative night. So we call it a fridge sweep. You could also do, leftovers, things like that. You could call it whatever you want. We just named it fridge sweep and it's just kind of stuck for the last 10 years. Okay. So habit number 4 is to prep your vegetables right when you get home. Now, this doesn't necessarily apply for all vegetables. There are going to be some things that you don't want to prep right away. Like you might look at it and be like, I'm not going to prep, all of my onions for the week right away. However, if you are really busy and it would be more convenient for you to have some chopped onions, you could definitely chop some onions and throw them in a mason jar and have those ready to go. We have done that for vacations where we just chop a bunch of onions and put them in a mason jar and they're good for the week. We just sprinkle them into eggs or whatever we're making at the time. And they're already chopped and ready to go. And a mason jar keeps them good all week long, which helps a ton. So you could do that. But I'm also looking at things like your broccoli, your cauliflower, carrots, and celery, like your strawberries and berries, any produce that you have. We do lettuce for a couple of days at a time. We don't usually chop all the lettuce for the week, but we will do it for, a few days and it stays good in our prep containers. We have these containers that are like rectangular and kind of flat. They're only a couple inches tall, and they have a bottom that is a drainage bottom. So it has a tray at the bottom so it can drain any liquid. And then it has some vents on the side. So if that type of produce is better with vents, you can open those or you can keep them closed. And it just helps a ton in keeping your produce really good for a longer period of time. It doesn't go wilty, it doesn't go bad right away. A lot of times, if you get produce home and you just throw it in the crisper drawer, it just kind of goes bad after a couple of days. And then it's like, well, I just wasted all that money on produce and we didn't even get to use it yet. Where if you're prepping it right when you get home and you're storing it according to the best way to store that type of produce, it's going to last a really long time. With these produce containers that we use, they last usually a couple of weeks. We can go with some of the produce. It's crazy how much of a difference it makes. But we do have a habit that when I get home from the grocery store, we have the sink cleaned out, we have it all clean, and then fill it with cold water and pour about half a cup of white vinegar in there. And I put the produce in there for a good 10 minutes. And then I just let it soak and it gets it clean and gets all the any like dirt, or if it ends up having like little bugs, we buy organic for most produce. So it ends up having those like little fly bugs in there sometimes, which is pretty gross. So it gives you a chance to get those out and away from your produce, and then you can rinse them off and they're clean. And then you just let them air dry on the counter. You can put them on a clean towel or some paper towels, whatever works for you. And then chop it according to whatever you want to do. So we use these produce containers and we chop broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, celery, and then we clean all our berries. We'll do peppers, things like that, where we're prepping all of this stuff right off the bat. We're doing the mess right away and getting it done. So then when it comes time to cooking the rest of the week, all of that prep work is done. All we have to do is grab those containers and just pull out what we need and either throw it directly onto a pan or into a sauce pot or like a stock pot, anything like that. Or we can just put it straight onto the cutting board and chop it into a smaller piece without actually having to go through the process of cleaning or getting seeds out or anything like that and washing because that's already done. It just makes the rest of the week go so much smoother. So that is something that is a very important part for us, and it's important for us to do it right away before any of the produce goes into the fridge because once it's in the fridge, we're usually not pulling it back out to prep it. So we kind of have to take a chunk of time to make sure that I do this right away when I get home from the grocery store, and then it goes into the fridge, and then we're set for the week. And it just is, it's one of my number one habits that I think makes meal planning so much easier. And I'm always telling everybody about these dang containers. So they're probably so sick of me talking about these containers, but they make such a big difference for us that I want like everybody to have them because I'm like, this makes your life so much easier. Okay, so number 5, the fifth habit is to always have a sink of soapy water when you're cooking. And this makes such a big difference, especially if dishes overwhelm you. We never want to get to the end of a meal and then wash this pile of dishes. Plus, when you it's sitting there during the cooking process and then the time that you're eating and visiting and then you get back into the kitchen, a lot of times a lot of it has dried and then it's crusty on there and then you're like scrubbing these dishes and it's just kind of a pain. So when you have a sink of soapy water while you're cooking, it allows you to just rinse things off and wash them off right away as you're cooking and as you go. And then when you get to the end of the process and it's time to eat, you really only have the dishes that you're using to eat and maybe the pot or the dish that it was being served in. And the rest of the dishes are already done. And it just makes it so much easier to quickly clean up and reset your kitchen. So, that is a huge one to reduce the amount of dishes that you have at the end. If you are like, "No, I'm not washing dishes," that's okay. Don't worry that you have to do this. It does make a huge difference, but you don't have to do it. But I would recommend, even if you're not washing them, if you're putting things into the sink as you're cooking, even if you're not washing them, make sure you're rinsing them off with hot water. Because even if you can get at least most of the food off of them, they're going to be at least easier and quicker to wash later. So that is a big thing as well. And that goes for any time you're using a dish. If you are using a dish, just make sure it is rinsed off before you put it in the dishwasher or in the sink or anything like that. Don't just put your dishes directly in the sink because they're going to get that crust on them and that is just makes them harder to wash, which is very unnecessary when we can do a quick 2-second spritz of the water and get everything off and we're good. So that is something to kind of think about, which goes into our sixth habit, which is to reset the kitchen after every meal. And this is a way to keep up with dishes and to just feel really good about the kitchen when you're going into it. So, having that sink of soapy water as you're cooking definitely helps with this because it makes it easier to reset after every meal. So, after you're doing breakfast, after you're doing lunch, all of these things, you want to make sure that you are making sure all the dishes are done and your kitchen is reset, whether you need to unload the dishwasher or reload the dishwasher, wipe off counters, get anything into the fridge or out of the fridge if you need it to thaw, anything like that. You just want to kind of look at the kitchen and think of everything as being just reset and ready for the next meal so that it's not going to stress you out when you go into the kitchen for your next meal. So if you kind of look at your kitchen before you leave after each meal, just think about what will make this easier when I come into the kitchen for the next meal and do what needs to be done and try and do it really quickly so it doesn't take up too much time. And then have that be kind of your habit of doing this quick check before you leave the kitchen. And it will become more automatic to just reset these things without even thinking about it. And it just makes it so much easier. And it doesn't get as overwhelming with these stacks of dishes when you're trying to do them multiple times throughout the day. Because it's easier to keep up on when you're doing small more often rather than this massive pile at one time, because that is exhausting and overwhelming for sure. All right. And the last one, the seventh habit that I think is a good habit to have is to create a system to save your favorite meal recipes. Now, I do have kind of a like physical system as well as a digital system. And you might find that having both works really well for you as well. You might find that, it's like, no, I want everything printed and on paper, or I just do digital only and I don't keep anything on paper. That is totally fine. What I'm saying here is to have a system for you where you know your go to find that meal. So when I am doing digital, a lot of times I'm finding recipes that we want to try something new online. And so it's a website. And if you've ever used a recipe on a website, a lot of times when you are on that website, you've got ads popping up and you've got things scrolling and you have to click the button that says jump to recipe. And it can be a little bit hectic when you're trying to find the ingredients versus the directions and all of those things. So what I love doing is I find a recipe and I want to try it. So then I click on the print button. And even if I'm not planning to print it, because I don't usually print most things if I'm doing a quick recipe, especially if I'm just trying it for the first time, I will click print. And then instead of sending it to my printer, I actually send it to a PDF. And then I save it to my files on my phone. And what this does is it just takes it off of the website. So all the ads stop popping up and being distracting. And it puts it on a printable format where it's all on one page. So I can see the ingredients, I can see the directions all in one, and I can look at that and I can follow the recipe. So if I like the recipe and I want to keep it, then I keep it in my files. If I don't, and I make sure that it's named as well. That is a big one. Like, make sure it is named. So when you go searching your files, you can just type in a search in the search bar of what you're looking for and you can find it right away. But when you are looking or saving those, if you like the recipe, then make sure you save it in the files. If you don't like the recipe, go delete it right away because then you aren't going to make it again. And then when you're looking through your recipes, you know that all of your recipes are things that you enjoyed. So that is something that I do. I love doing that. For physical, recipes, I have two binders. One is my mom and dad made this three-ring binder that is all of our family recipes and just recipes that we grew up with, that my mom really enjoys and that we have enjoyed as kids growing up. And she made them for all of us adults many years ago. So only it's kind of us older kids were adults at the time. And she made us these three-ring binders that have all these recipes, and they're handwritten. Most of them are handwritten with her handwriting. So it's really special. And we have this physical three-ring binder, and each page usually has like a recipe or maybe just a couple of recipes depending on how long they are. So I have that binder. I also have another binder that has these it's actually like a photo album, or photo album style. It is created for recipes. It's a really old book, but it's also a three-ring binder, but it has like photo album pages, like those plastic pages that have where you can slide in a photo. But instead of photos, you slide in a recipe index card. So you can take this old three-ring binder photo album. You could probably get them at Walmart or a thrift store, even, wherever you're getting them. You can get these inserts and then just slide in your index card. So if you have a ton of index cards already, you don't have to get rid of those to get your recipes into a three-ring binder. You can just slide them in there. So those are just some ideas. I'm kind of rambling now, but those are just some ideas. You just want to have some sort of system that works really well for you and how you prefer to save recipes. If you like printing everything, then maybe just getting a blank three-ring binder and printing those pages that you're saving and just, do your hole punch on them and stick them in your three-ring binder and you're set to go. You could organize them by category, you could organize them by in alphabetical order, however you want to do it, whatever works well for you. Just find a system that works well and then stick to that system so that you don't feel like recipes are all over the place. And when you're looking for a recipe, you're like, I have no idea where I saved it. Is it in Pinterest? Is it in my files? Is it in my texts? Is it is it printed? Is it in my recipe book? Is it in my recipe box? Like, I don't really know. We want to make this much easier for ourselves and have like one go-to physical system and one go-to like digital system if we can, if that feels like it's getting a little bit stressful. You might have a couple of different areas, but you just want to pay attention to this. If this is stressing you out, then this might be something to refine. If it's not stressing you out, then don't worry about it. It's totally fine. So these are the seven, and I hope that this is giving you inspiration rather than more overwhelm. These are just things to think about, things to think about how you can make your life simpler, especially when it comes to kitchen habits. I don't know if you can hear my dog. He's like totally grumbling next to me. So you might hear some low rumbles. And he's just, I don't know if he's sleeping or what he's doing, but he's just grumbling next to me. So you might be able to hear that. But I will recap those seven habits for you. But first, I just wanted to mention that if you are looking for a resource to get your 5 foundational routines in place, I do have my workbook available right now. It is at yourorganizedlifeblueprint.com, or you can check the show notes for any links that you have in there. If you need, we have the free Audit Your Habits printable. It's like journal prompts to just get you thinking about these 5 areas for the 5 foundational routines, and just think about what is currently happening in your life so that you can recognize where you want to maybe make some changes, what you want to keep, things like that. So it just gives you some starting points to kind of journal a little bit about those areas. And then we've got the workbook to help you get those in place. And then there is also an option to do one-on-one coaching with me if you feel like you need a little extra help to kind of talk things through or build these routines, or maybe you're struggling in certain areas of these 5 foundational routines, or you just want to just go back and forth and kind of map out a plan for you. That is also an option to do that as well right now. I don't know how long the one-on-one sessions are going to be available. I will just mention that because when we get the course out, things might change. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. So I'm not going to say, but I do just want to give you a heads up that I don't know how long the one-on-ones are going to be available if that is something that you are really wanting or have been looking at. So that is just something to note. But I will go through those 7 good habits to create in the kitchen for smoother meal routines. Is number 1, clean your fridge out each week. Number 2, have painter's tape and a permanent marker. Number 3 is to fridge sweep every week. Have at least one fridge sweep day. Number 4 is to prep your vegetables as soon as you get home. Number 5 is to have soapy water when you're cooking to just wash dishes as you go. Number 6 is to make sure the kitchen is reset after each meal. And number 7 is to have a system to save your favorite recipes. So that is it for today. I will see you back here on the next episode.
Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.